Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today as we talk about Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness and our Americorps programs. This is our informational webinar to explain both of our programs, our direct service and our indirect service capacity building program, both of which have upcoming RFP deadlines. So as we get started today, I just wanted to introduce you to myself real quick and talk about what the day is going to look like, or what this quick webinar will look like for us. So I am Kelly. I am the Director of National Service Programs at the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. I have been with MICAH and with these programs since 2015. Prior to that, I served in Americorps myself. I did a year with the Americorps National Civilian Community Corps and a year in Lansing with the local Americorps state program. So I'm always happy to talk about all things Americorps, whether or not it's our programs. And I always like to use this experience as a member myself when it comes to supporting members throughout their own year of service. So for our webinar today, we are just going to do a really quick overview of Americorps to make sure you have some of that basic information about what it is and what these programs do. And then we'll talk about our two different programs. So we have MICAH's Americorps, our direct service program, and then we have the Capacity Building to End Homelessness Americorps Vista program. We'll also call that CBEH Americorps Vista. And that is our capacity building or our indirect service program. So for the Americorps Agency, this is the federal organization, the agency of the U.S. government that functions as a network of local, state, and national service programs. That's really meant to engage Americans in service through various streams of programming. So when we look at the Americorps Agency, this is also formerly known as the Corporation for National and Community Service. If anyone has any prior experience with Americorps, they did undergo a rebranding. There are sort of two umbrellas. There's Americorps and Americorps Senior. Under the Americorps umbrella, we see Americorps State National, Vista, and the National Civilian Community Corps. And then Americorps Senior has a bunch of great programming as well, such as foster grandparents, RSVP, and senior companions. So it is very likely that you could be interacting with Americorps members all over the place in a lot of different capacities. The overall mission of the Americorps Agency is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteering. Some quick facts about Americorps. It did start in the early 90s, I believe it was 1993. Every year right now, there are over 40,000 communities that are being impacted and served directly through Americorps members. Every year, there are about 250,000 Americorps members and volunteers engaged in service. Since the early 90s, there have been over 1 million Americorps alums now officially, and those members have served over 1.6 billion hours for the organizations that they've been connected to. When it comes to the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness and Americorps, we do operate two programs. So we have MICAH's Americorps, our direct service program, and the Capacity Building to End Homelessness Americorps Vista program, again, our indirect or our capacity building service program. Both of these programs, our intention is to provide services that help organizations increase their capacity to become more effective and more efficient, and to meet needs and fill gaps. It is not meant to replace or replicate current staff positions. It is really meant to help the organization go above and beyond those current operations. We also want to make sure that our Americorps members, they're going to give a lot to the organization. They can get a lot done. We want to make sure that they gain a lot as well. So they should benefit professionally from that year, because Americorps is a really great opportunity for learning about what is likely a new field for that member and sort of preparing for a career for whatever life after Americorps might hold. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about our specific programs. First up is our direct service program, also called MICAH's Americorps. In this program, members are placed with housing and homeless service providers to provide direct targeted services to individuals who are experiencing or are at risk of homelessness. With this, we do 12-month service terms. So for our upcoming program year, we intend for service to start on October 3rd, and it would end September 29th of the next year. We do have the possibility for additional start dates if we can't identify candidates for October. So we'll likely do a couple more, but we won't be starting members beyond January 2024, just to help with our sort of grant management on our end. Members can serve in one of two capacities, essentially. We have full-time positions. We have 17 of those to distribute this year. And we have half-time positions. We have 6 of those to distribute. So for full-time, that's going to be 35 hours per week as an average minimum. And half-time is going to be about 20 hours per week as an average minimum. When it comes to this program, our performance measures are to track the number of clients who've received services, the number of clients who've obtained housing, number of clients who've obtained employment, as well as the number of volunteers who were recruited and mobilized by our Americorps members. So I like to point out these performance measures because I think it can be really helpful when you're thinking of a position and thinking of activities, making sure that those activities are going to connect to some of these performance measures. To be a host site within this program, we do ask that the organization be a nonprofit organization or a public agency that's offering services to homeless or at-risk populations, that they utilize the Homeless Management Information System or a comparable database for a domestic violence program. We ask that they actively participate in their local continuum of care, that they be a paid member of MICAH for 2022 and 2023, and that they provide the required host site match fee. So for this coming year, for a full-time member, that host site match is going to be over $12,000. And for a half-time member, it's going to be just over $6,700. We also ask that our host sites select a full-time on-site host site supervisor. They will have to submit a signed host site agreement or an MOU, submit a finalized member position description. We'll have time to work on that. We ask that our host sites advertise their positions, that they handle a lot of the recruitment. We recruit as well as a program, and that they have a hand in selecting their member, of course, all of that with the help of the program. We ask that our host sites orient and train Americorps members, and that they provide their members with adequate space, equipment, and resources that are needed in order to do that service position. Within this program, we offer 3 types of service positions for our members. So host sites can select any combination if they're requesting multiple members, or make sure that they're choosing one to sort of be the main focus. So we have housing search and information specialist. These positions are really going to be focused on helping with those steps that are needed to obtain and maintain housing. At a lot of our organizations, this looks like conducting intakes and assessments, addressing housing barriers, obtaining documents and funds needed for housing, maintaining lists of available housing, helping clients apply for that, maintaining communication with landlords, very housing focused. We have outreach specialist positions as well. This is also often going to include conducting intakes and assessments, but it's going to focus a lot on finding folks who are not engaged in care and bringing them into the scope of services. So this will include maintaining contact with local service providers for resources or referrals, providing information, again, to those not engaged in care, and really linking folks to mainstream services. And lastly, we have resource generation and management specialists. So within this, we're going to focus a lot on employment and just building up income and self-sufficiency. So a lot of members in these positions are going to look, or the positions are going to look like helping with job searches and resume building, networking with local employers, linking clients to education opportunities, and connecting to other income resources outside of employment as well. So when you look at our host site application, you'll see that you can really tailor these position activities to what your organization needs. So there will be some that'll be required, and then you can really sort of remove or add what makes sense, and that'll be part of the application review. So remote service, I know a lot of organizations are having folks work at home or do hybrid schedules. So when it comes to Americorps, right now, we are able to do the same thing. We do allow what we call teleservices, remote service, in extenuated circumstances, and the pandemic does, of course, qualify for that. So it is allowable in response to the pandemic if a host site is not fully staffing on site or they need to engage remotely as necessary. With this, though, we of course ask that there is a daily supervision and communication plan in place, as all Americorps hours and activities do need to be verifiable by supervisors, because supervisors sign off on timesheets. So with this program, what would the Americorps member get, right, as far as benefits? So they would receive a living allowance. It would be paid bi-weekly by MICAH, so they'd be on payroll with the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. It would be distributed in 26 equal payments, so members receive the same stipend amount regardless of how many hours they might do within a pay period. For a full-time member, it is $19,000, and for a half-time member, it is $10,059. Both of these are pre-tax amounts. Upon successful completion of the service term, so once they've completed all of their hours and made it to their service end date, members receive an education award. This education award can go toward paying qualified student loans, which essentially means federal student loans, or for cost of attendance at most public institutions. So for a full-time member, they'll receive almost $6,500 in an education award, and half-time members will receive over $3,200. This is held within a trust for them, and they have 7 years to use it after it's been earned. Full-time members in this program are eligible to enroll in our program's health insurance for the member only, and they may be eligible for child care assistance, but it is based on their household income. There's also going to be training opportunities that'll be provided by us at MICAH, by Michigan's Americorps, our Michigan Community Service Commission, and by the host site. Members can also receive student loan forbearance for qualified student loans, and at the end of the year, they can apply to have that accrued interest paid off as well. So there are some restrictions, of course, with Americorps programming that we will ask our host sites to keep in mind when building these positions. There are federal restrictions around fundraising, religious, and political activities. The RFP goes into a lot more detail there, and you're welcome to ask me questions if you're curious. It's also important to note that members cannot perform any clerical or administrative duties, such as answering the main phones, covering the front desk, or completing data entry on behalf of others. We want to make sure that our members are in positions that are distinct and unique to that member, that they are not sharing the same position description as a staff member. It's really meant to allow sites to, again, go above and beyond kind of what that normal operation looks like. Okay, so the RFP for this program, this is not due until May 20th. New applicants, so if you haven't hosted an Americorps member with our program in the last couple of years, new applicants should complete questions 1 through 19. Returning host sites will have a few extra questions to complete. And when applications are submitted, they will need to include a rough draft of a member position description for each requested position. So again, sites can request multiple positions, but each has to have their own unique position description. When you look at this in the RFP, you'll see that some service activities are listed in red. Those are required. We want to make sure that those are consistent activities across all of our Americorps member positions. And other service activities can, of course, be added or removed as necessary to make sure you're really tailoring that position to what your organization needs. And we'll review that to make sure that they're within the scope of the program. If you're applying for this program and you would like to talk about whether or not service activities would be a good fit and could be allowable, you're more than welcome to email me, and I'm happy to talk about that and find something that could work. Next up is our Capacity Building to End Homelessness Americorps Vista program. So all Americorps Vista programs are anti-poverty programs, and they provide full-time service members to nonprofits and local agencies that serve low-income communities. In this program, members serve full-time for a 1-year term. It is 37.5 hours per week as a minimum that member has to meet. The intention of Vista is to create a multi-year Vista project that has clear intended outcomes and would increase the capacity of the host site organization. So when we are looking at applications, we really want to see that sites have created a project that is really meant to accomplish something, that's meant to build capacity, and it's something that will ideally be built upon year after year for 3 to 5 years typically. Member start dates for this program are actually set by the Federal Americorps Agency. We do have multiple start dates coming up this summer and fall. So we would communicate that out to awarded sites, and we would recruit based on those start dates. Every Vista program is also going to have the same core principles. They're going to be anti-poverty focused. So the intention, of course, is to strengthen and support efforts to eliminate and alleviate poverty. And it's focused on long-term solutions to poverty. Community empowerment, we want to make sure that each project is actually responsive and relevant to the community served. Sustainable solutions is another principle. We want to utilize Vista as a short-term resource that's meant to build long-term sustainability. So creating things, as this next one says in capacity building, right, creating systems or making impacts that are going to remain long after that Americorps service and that Americorps partnership ends. Things that are meant to expand the scale, impact, and resource leveraging ability. So within this program, similar to our other programs, the host site requirements include being a nonprofit, a government entity, or a government institution offering services to those experiencing or at risk of homelessness. We do ask that these sites, again, be a member of MICAH for 2022 and 2023, that they submit a signed host site agreement. We also ask that despite the fact that members aren't doing direct client services, that they use HMIS or a comparable database, because we do still have data connected to that to collect throughout these projects. That they provide a yearly host site match fee of $6,000, and that is for, per member term. Assign a full-time on-site supervisor. That they advertise, recruit, and select their Vista candidate. Again, with help from the program, we'll be doing a lot of advertising, recruitment, and interviewing as well. That host sites arrange for a designated workspace, resources, and equipment, and that they conduct host site provided orientation, and that they do ongoing training throughout the year. So we have 4 different focus areas for service activities within this program. Organizations are welcome to choose any combination. We would recommend at least 2 of these areas being included in the application. So we have community awareness and engagement, conducting community outreach, host community meetings, create informational materials, implement communication plans. These are all examples of activities. They're not required by any means, but this is really meant to increase that awareness and the engagement with the organization in that local community. The next focus area is developing, expanding, and strengthening partnerships and networks. This could look like researching partnership opportunities, hosting collaboration meetings, improving communication about community projects, things like that. We have financial resources, so this would possibly include developing fundraising plans, maintaining funder relationships, drafting and submitting grants, and facilitating community giving drives. And lastly, we have volunteer recruitment and management. So this could look like developing a volunteer generation and retention plan, clarifying volunteer roles and creating position descriptions, recruiting or coordinating volunteers. It is important to note that Vistas cannot train or supervise volunteers, so they would need to have staff to help with that. And then develop tracking systems as well for volunteer tracking. So again, I want to point out those performance measures because it can be helpful in creating those position activities. So we are going to be tracking resources leveraged. That'll look like monetary and in-kind donations. Community volunteers, so this is going to be volunteers recruited and managed and their hours. Under partnerships and networks, we're going to be looking for the number of community organizations that received capacity building services and increased capacity. It can just be the host site itself that received those services from the Vista and hopefully increase their capacity by the time that term is over. And it could also include new and current partnerships that are being developed and maintained. For community awareness and engagement, for that focus area, we're going to track the number of events that were held or facilitated either entirely or in part by our Vista member, and that were meant to increase awareness and engagement. And then lastly, we track anti-poverty data as well. So for organizations that do provide client services, we're going to ask for some of that HMIS information about clients served and client housed within that date range that the Vista project occurred. And for sites that don't provide client services, we're just going to ask for the number of service providers that were assisted or that increased capacity. So not every Vista position is going to report toward all of these performance measures. Again, it's really going to depend on what the host site chooses as far as those focus areas and those activities themselves. But again, we do want to see 2 of those focus areas so that we know each of our members is contributing to our overall performance measures. When it comes to remote service, we again can allow teleservice within this program. This is specifically due to current allowances from the Americorps Agency. So unlike the teleservice allowance we have for a direct service program, Americorps Vista is operated much more on a federal level than on the sponsor level within us at MICAH. So this is a current allowance in direct response to the pandemic. Again, we want to have a daily supervision and communication plan in place for any time that a member might be serving remotely. And within this program, members will also have to submit a teleservice request form prior to serving remotely. And should this allowance be removed on the federal level, they would give us plenty of notice, and we would make sure our host sites had plenty of notice to prepare for resuming on-site service. But it's not anything that we anticipate right now. All right, benefits for the Vista program. So our Vista members would also receive a living allowance. Unlike in our direct service program, though, this would actually come directly from the Americorps Agency, so directly from that federal level. It would be biweekly, and this is the amount that is biweekly right now. This is $575.40 per pay period. It is a pre-tax amount. It does work out to be about $15,000 pre-tax. And this could be subject to change in the next year, but this is where we are right now. Our housing stipend is also provided by MICAH. So on top of their biweekly living allowance, members are going to receive, if they opt in, if they are paying a mortgage or paying rent, they can opt in to receiving $400 a month from MICAH that would be paid directly to their landlord or their mortgage provider. Members are also eligible for health benefits for the member only, and again, childcare assistance based on household income. Members also receive that education award if they opt in. If they don't want the education award, if they don't have any student loans or plans to go for new education, they can choose to select an end year cash stipend, which is going to be about $1,800 in their last direct deposits. Members also can qualify for student loan forbearance for federal student loans, and again, net accrued interest payment for qualified student loans. And training opportunities provided by MICAH, provided directly by Americorps Vista, and provided by the host site. So we do have restrictions within this program as well. Within Vista, members may not provide a direct service to clients or service recipients. It's really important that their service remains indirect and focused on building that capacity within your organization. They also cannot perform any administrative or clerical duties. They cannot perform activities that duplicate routine staff functions or displace paid staff. So similar to our other program, we want to see that distinction, something that really is setting apart and allowing your organization to do something that hasn't been done or hasn't been done in the way, to the level that you're hoping. Vista members may not provide any religious instruction, conduct worship services, etc. They may not participate in any political or legislative advocacy, campaigns, or lobbying. So very similar, because of the way that Vista is structured, very similar to federal employees. Vista members are also restricted by the Hatch Act. So the Hatch Act does apply to them as far as what kind of political action they can and cannot take within their positions, right? We don't want to see an alignment of a political stance sort of attached to Americorps Vista and to our program. Members may not provide a direct benefit to a for-profit business. And also, Vista members may not be a current volunteer of the host site organization, and they may not be a direct family member of anyone within the organization's staff or board. So there is a nepotism clause in Vista. So the RFP for the Vista programs actually due pretty soon. It's going to be due next Friday, April 29th. Host sites will need to answer questions related to organizational need and capacity, sustainability, and project goals, and we'll need to select from the 4 available service activity focus areas. Again, any combination can be requested, but it is suggested to include at least 2 of the focus areas. Applications will need to be submitted with a rough draft of a Vista assignment description. We call it a VAD. It's also known as just a position description. This VAD should outline the objectives of the assignment, the activities that fall under each objective, and timelines for completion. Further VAD assistance and training will be provided after host site selection. So what is submitted is truly just a rough draft, and then we work from there to sort of bring that into where it needs to be. So regardless of the program that you might be interested in, we want to see some really consistent things across both programs, both RFPs. So we hope to see a clear need for Americorps placement, right? Gaps that are currently unfilled or needs that are currently unmet, and an adequate amount of member activities. For our direct service program, we want to make sure that there's a significant amount of direct service or client interaction, and that is distinct from, again, those current staff positions. We will need to see that members will contribute toward any of the program's performance measures, and sites should show their ability to not only utilize the Americorps position, but also support and develop their Americorps member. Strong supervision plans are one of the most important factors in an Americorps member's success and in their retention for that program year. So that's going to be really important as we review these applications. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer them. You can also feel free to give me a call at the phone number listed here or email me at the email on the screen. I'm happy to talk about our applications and provide any technical assistance that may be needed. Other than that, if not, thank you again for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.